is TWiP. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the hot seat, I have my friend, Mr. Michael Sasser. He is a boudoir photographer based in Southern California. And yesterday even, just, inside baseball, I had this epiphany of, I'm watching all these videos and sort of getting my brain around the enormity of AI and all the changes that are happening in our industry. And I was thinking, man, boudoir has got to be one of the most affected industries or genres by AI at the very least. And who do I know that is crushing it in that genre that I can ask a bunch of questions to is this guy, Michael Sasser. Man, I want to, first of all, before we dive into this whole AI discussion and all that, I just want to catch up with you. You and I haven't talked in quite some time. What have you been up to? What has been keeping your brain occupied and nourished in the past 6 months or so?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Past 6 months have been awesome. I've been doing a little bit of traveling. I was down in Bali with another photographer, actually. Irene Rudnick, she's another YouTube photographer. I think it's really nourishing to meet up with other creatives that you're inspired by, that you feel that you can, have some bigger life conversations with outside of just your typical, how do we create pictures? So that was a really enjoyable experience. I've been working on a little new product for some photographers who are unsure of where to start their business, before you even know posing type stuff, how do you brand yourself, how do you set up your social media profiles, giving you a basic understanding of how taxes work for for people who are running their own businesses, things like that. And hobby wise, I've been playing a little music, so I've been trying to touch on all the areas of my life for sure.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to keep it all mixed up, I was, I was looking at your website yesterday and I noticed you've got a lot, you were doing events and some things like that. What's that world like, especially post pandemic, that whole world of it, because it shut down, right? It was gone. The whole world of in-person photography workshops and all that. Prior to the pandemic, everybody and their uncle was doing a workshop. And so we were beginning to see the shakeout of only the strong survive, and then pandemic, and now you pop back doing this cool stuff. So talk about that a little bit to the extent you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of people have gotten to know me through my YouTube videos. And honestly, that has been the way that I've really preferred to get my information across. I've done a handful of in-person workshops. I've done, the very first time I ever taught anything, I think I was teaching videography, how to shoot video for boudoir photographers. This was 2015, I think. And it was fun. It was great to be able to talk to people and hear their questions immediately. But with the internet, it's really amazing that you can receive so much from so many. I can make a post. What do you guys want to learn about? And then I can make a video that thousands of people can see and learn from, which has really been amazing. It's one of the reasons why I love doing the online courses. If somebody, has goes through the course and says, hey, I just didn't really understand this part, I can make another video and add that into the course so that everybody who already has the course can view it. So I feel like that's been one of the real benefits of doing things online versus in person. I definitely, I used to go to WPPI and all those things. I guess they shut down for a little bit, but we'll see. It's always nice to get out in person and teach stuff. There's nothing like a light bulb moment that you see somebody they've been doing one thing the same way. They're like, I watched the video and I'm still not getting it. And they're just go up to take that picture and you just shuffle them to the right a little bit and their brain explodes. They go, oh my God, I finally see it. That's very cool to do in person. So we'll see if, some more in-person stuff comes up, but it's just really amazing how many people can consume content online for not very much money from anywhere in the world at any time of day. It's just really made it so accessible, and that's one of the things that I really love about doing things online. So we'll see if that changes in the future, if I start to do more in-person things. But I mean, for the time being, it's just really been amazing to connect with so many people this way.
I love it. Yeah, yeah, and the pandemic and Zoom and or infrastructure that allows that kind of stuff to happen, it was accelerated, right? So why not? Yeah, I was talking about this before, and we'll talk about AI in a second, folks. I know you're waiting on that. But I remember before the pandemic even started, I was questioning on the show the I don't know, the idea of going to large form trade shows, because a lot of people go there for the classes and to see the new gear and they hear the speakers. Nothing against those shows. Those shows are great. But it turns out the people I spoke to, most of them go there for just to connect with other photographers that they haven't seen. And it's kind of like a reunion every, whatever interval, versus going there specifically for the training or to see the new camera or whatever, which you can do from your phone on the toilet if you want to, right? You don't have to get on a plane and risk disease or whatever to see this new stuff, which makes these virtual classrooms even more important because, like you said, you can reach all corners of the globe and people can watch on their own time. There's all different business models in there, whether it's a hybrid live or a live or pre-recorded that you just roll, or just pre-recorded that they can buy and get instant access. All these different things make it easier, and the tools are easier now, right? Like with Apple yesterday announcing their new headset, that's going to be a whole nother way for people to consume your content, right? Just go sit in Sasser's classroom, and there you are up there teaching with a model and doing the whole 9 yards, and I can do it from the comfort of my headset, sitting in the park or on a plane or whatever. So yeah, it's changing.
How wild!
Yeah, it is changing.
I'm sure there's even going to be, like, I just saw that there's some software now that, like, a drone. I can't remember what I saw that this could happen, but it was like a drone could fly around a scene, and then it would take that 2D data from the video and create a 3D map of it, and then be able to, and then you could move around in that space. You could use it for gaming, or you could use it for planning your furniture inside your space or whatever it is. But I'll bet there will be a time when you could set up like 3 or 4 cameras in your space and just have them film, and it'll create a map of the whole scene so that when you're learning from somebody like me, you can put the headset on and then like walk around in that space because it's been turned from a 2D space into a 3D space.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. A friend of mine used that technique that you're talking about with the drone flying around and mapping an area. It's called photogrammetry. And what he was doing, I mean, farmers use it, all kinds of different industries use it. He was using it because he was having the pool in his backyard filled in, the hole, right? So he needed to figure out the exact amount of dirt he needed in order to fill that space. So enter photogrammetry, fly the drone, look at that space, and this is how much dirt you need, order it, boom, you're done. Yeah. So, yeah, crazy, man. So math. So that brings us to today, where we are right now, right? With all this AI stuff. I reached out to you a couple days ago, asking for your thoughts on this stuff. And I was actually surprised. I thought your response was going to be, oh my God, I could do so much more stuff now with this AI and this Photoshop's generative fill. This is amazing. It's just, I could do the things that I have always wanted to do in Boudoir. I almost got the exact opposite response than I thought. I was like, no, Sasser is one of the most tech savvy people I know, the highly competent photographer and educator, and he's not all in on generative fill. I must dive deeper. So let's dive deeper on that. So here's my novice. I'm not a boudoir photographer, though I wish I was, right? My outside view looking in was just what I asked you. I was like, okay, if you could take a photo of a woman and give her, or a subject even, right, and give them a choice of negligee to be wearing, or not so much body shaping or any of that stuff, but changing the background, changing the objects in the room. Say you're shooting in a hotel room and that nightstand looks horrible, circle it, get rid of it. Having that level of control of every pixel, I thought that was a holy grail for anybody doing this kind of work. Why isn't it, Michael Sasser? Why?
That's a great question. And there is actually a few things that you just mentioned that I do think will end up making a pretty massive difference. But initially, I think people are they're wondering, you're still talking about the experience of taking a picture of somebody and then turning that into some place that they're not, or turning that into some outfit that they don't own, or, I'd be curious to see, like, if somebody's really into, whatever fancy $10 million necklace and they want a shot of themselves wearing it or something, then they can, do that. Or they're like, I would love, let's go take a picture on the beach in LA, but I'd really love to be in Tahiti. So let's let's generative fill Tahiti in there. What's interesting about that is that I think there are plenty of photography industries where that makes total sense, and I think in order to be really specific about this, we have to think of like, who is the client? Not looking at it from the photographer's point of view, like how cool would it be to have images where it looked like I shot in Tahiti? Like, absolutely, that's very cool to do. Some, you want to do it, some photography with some fancy lingerie company that costs $1,000 for a bra, but you just can't afford to go buy that bra. From a photographer's perspective, like, awesome. But from the client's perspective, from the perspective of somebody why does somebody spend money on boudoir photography? They are, looking for a self-confidence boost. Maybe they're trying to let go of the previous ideas of themselves. They're being very vulnerable going through this experience to get these pictures to show who they are. Not everybody. Some people want angel wings and some people want, whatever it is. But a majority of the clients who are coming in are doing this because the experience of them doing it is really that's really where the bulk of the worth of the experience is. And then you get pictures of yourselves that reinforce that. So it wouldn't make sense to come in to do a picture, on somebody's couch and then have it look like you were on a beach in Tahiti. It just, those two things don't line up for the reason why, boudoir specifically as a genre exists for the client's experience. Now, I think what you're talking about, to be able to do it creatively, for art purposes, I think it's going to be awesome. For just as big as your imagination is, I think it's limitless. But because boudoir is so much about the experience of being vulnerable, doing something you never thought you could do, you're scared to make it happen, but you're like, I want to make this transformation in the way that I view myself. All those things take place during the photo shoot. That's where the transformation takes place. And then you see the pictures afterwards, and they're a reminder of what, of you making that happen. So that's why I think boudoir is such an interesting photographic genre compared to all of the other purposes of photography that are out there, which I think a lot of those will make massive use of all of the software.
Yeah, it's interesting because you look at it from the perspective of the public, right? So photographers aren't operating in a bubble, right? So and the public's perception of photography and the ease to get a good shot has been forever changed by the iPhone and computational photography. It used to be you had to have a certain level of skill in order to get a decent photo exposed correctly. Now, the phone is doing all sorts of magic at the point of capture. So now I think the level of expectation for excellence is probably higher, and the skill requirement to get there is lower. Right. So now, notwithstanding posing or the interaction and all that stuff that goes into the just the technical side of it. So I wonder in the future, as people become more comfortable with these kinds of technologies, are you, like folks like you that are doing the work, are you going to start getting questions from informed clients that are like, hey, this is great, but you know what? Instead of that desk, I would really love an old Victorian desk over there. Could you change that? And could you make this? And by the way, I don't like this negligee I have on. Can you make it pink? You know, that kind of stuff. Do you foresee that happening, you know, in the near future?
100%. And honestly, we see that now with like, can you Photoshop me? Can you skin smooth me? Can you take out my acne? Can you, you know, for Boudoir, it's a lot of stretch marks and it's a lot of cellulite is the number one things that people ask to remove. And there's currently software to do that pretty well. But it's obviously getting even better day after day. So the idea that they're going to say, and actually this is one of the notes that I took, that I think these things will be used in photography. So I have no doubt that somebody will come in and instead of bringing in hair extensions, they'll say, it'd be great if my hair was longer in the photos. And you'll just be able to do that. Just make the hair longer. And, with the informed of knowing what is possible within this photography space and with what the capabilities are, I have no doubt that people are going to ask for that. As a photographer, you are going to have the ability to choose who your target clients are. Just like if you only want to shoot film, you can present that as that's what you provide. And if you brand yourself correctly, you market yourself correctly, you'll have clients who are coming to you not asking for, hey, can you shoot this on a Z8 or can you shoot this on a, whatever. They just want what you provide, which is film photography. So for me, for instance, part of my brand is that I don't Photoshop that much, even by today's standards. So somebody comes to me and says, I got my stretch marks. Can you Photoshop those out? I'll have a conversation with them about, okay, I can understand why you might want to remove those, but those are a representation of, maybe you having your kids. That's a part of your life. Every time you look in the mirror, they're there now. So to take them out in this picture, to me is kind of saying like, the goal is for you to see this picture and say, I look beautiful, kind of regardless of, I don't have to love them, but they're a part of me. It's not something to be ashamed of. And ideally they'll take, they'll think about it and they'll say, okay, let's not Photoshop them and I'll see. And most of the time after they just get used to seeing them, if they can see the picture as a whole, as it's a beautiful picture and not zoom in on just a couple of pixels, I think that's a really beautiful thing. So that's a conversation that I have with them, even on the phone when they're like, how much do you Photoshop? That's the conversation that I have with them. So some people won't book me because they want to go to the person who's going to, skin smooth and remove pores and all of that stuff. But if they hire me, they know that they're going to see some imperfections and that's what skin looks like. That's what humans look like. So as a creative, as a photographer, you have the ability to put your brand forward in that way. So as clients are asking, I want my photos of me to look like I'm in Tahiti. I've always wanted to go, but I could never afford it. You have the ability to say, that's just not the kind of work that I do, or absolutely, that's something that we can do. If that's what you want, I'm here to make my clients happy and make their dreams come true. And so that's what I'm going to provide for you.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, which makes sense because I was watching which one of your courses. I think it was your Boudoir Accelerator course 2.0, and one of the comments you made in there. And I encourage people, if you're interested in this genre, go check out that course. I'll leave a link to it in the show notes for this and in the YouTube description. But one of the things you said was that about not. I think the way you phrased it was you don't remove anything that's permanent.
The phrase is, I'll just tell you the phrase. If it's permanent, leave it in. If it's temporary, take it out. So that means you wake up with a pimple. I'm not going to be like, well, that's what your face looks like. Because it's not really, that's just like that day. You may not have that pimple for the other 364 days of the year. But something that's like a part of you, those are the sort of things that we live with all the time, every day. They're a part of us. Accepting that doesn't define, our worth or our value or what makes us, or that we're different and that's a bad thing. All that stuff, if we could just wipe that away, the idea of that you know, you have cellulite on the back of your legs, and it's something to feel shame around. It's just, if we could just get rid of that mentality, and I think one way to do it is just to like, it should just be a non-conversation. You know, it's just like, you have fingernails. Okay. It's just like a thing that you have. It's not something to think positively or negatively about. So that's the phrasing that I use with clients.
That's what you get. Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking you look at, I mean, there's a whole contingent, a whole segment of the population that rails against that, right? That's like the Instagram model generation, the folks that would rather have, you know, not just the idealistic version of them presented when they're online, but a hyper realistic version of themselves, or a hyper realistic and uber perfect version of them whenever they appear online, whether it be in a photo. And now, this is the other question I'm going to throw at you. Now, like based on yesterday's announcement with Apple, I thought this might have been coming, not this fast, but the idea that you can now scan yourself and have the digital version of you show up in meetings, you know, in a Zoom call or something, which is basically anywhere else online. You can have this, you know, a perfect version of you show up. What is, like, is that a market segment? You know, not taking all the morality out of it and the, you know, the self-worth and the, you know, the empowerment piece of that out of it. Is that a market segment creating perfect renditions of people to represent themselves, like the perfect avatar, the Michael Sasser avatar package, where, you know, I'm gonna photograph you,
make a jawline, and like
I'd have all the things. I'm like, basically, hey, when I look in the mirror, I see The Rock. Everybody else sees, you know, Steve Urkel, but I see The Rock. So put me as The Rock whenever I show up in meetings, or different versions of you for different situations. Right? Is that, do you see, put it on your futurist hat? Do you see things moving that way?
Absolutely. I mean, that's something that like I absolutely imagine that to be. There's like an old sci-fi movie with Bruce Willis called Surrogate. It's pretty cheesy. I don't know if I'd recommend watching it. I just remember that basically what you would do is you had like a surrogate version of yourself, and then you'd lay in this chair, and then you would control the surrogate. So you'd stay home, but your surrogate would go out. And all the surrogates were, you know, in shape and perfect skin, and they were strong, and they were, you know, their eyes were a bright color, you know, whatever it was all this idealized version of themselves. And then nobody went outside anymore, because to do so meant that you were like not only vulnerable to like disease and being, you know, if your surrogate dies, somebody, you know, shoots them, you're still fine. So there's like a safety aspect, but also this like, I don't want to, I'm afraid of showing people my real self. Or maybe it's just exciting to be able to be something that you always imagined that you would be. Whatever it is, 100%, that's for sure going to be, there's AI versions of people. I saw a woman who's doing like, there's like a filter that makes you look significantly younger. Like this woman that's in her late 30s is using an Instagram profile of herself, but that makes her look like 17 or 18, and they're like really provocative pictures. So she's basically selling the likeness of an AI version of her, a younger version of her, in order to capitalize on, you know, this income generating system of people who are attracted to, you know, 17, 18-year-olds. And there's some legality in that of like how old you look or how young you look and for what type of pay, because you actually are older. So I have no doubt that this is going to be a time when we, you know, it's going to be difficult to know what people actually look like unless you've met them in person. Yeah.
I mean, that may be a whole nother industry. Like, you know, if you have this badge, it's really you, right? Or something, you know, to authenticate. Yeah, it reminds me, you remember this show, I think it was MTV. You remember this show called Catfish? Remember Catfish?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have folks that haven't heard of Catfish, the whole premise of the show was these people would form relationships, long distance relationships with other people, never having met them in person or seen them even in a lot of cases. So, and they were like full on in love, head over heels with this, in some cases, fictional person. Sometimes it was a real person, but you never find out until the end of the show. That was the whole premise of the show. And so I think about that, and I think about, okay. And then the movie Her, with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson.
There's been so many really incredible ideas around what AI could become.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see some of that. But even in the photography space, let's talk about in the photography space. I was listening to somebody else. I wish I should just write down all of these things that I hear so I can reference the people that I heard them from. But essentially the idea that you can go into ChatGPT, and I recommend it, and write a newsletter to your client base. You could draft your website based on I'm bad at about me pages, but I want to do Boudoir because I've heard it's empowering, and then you just have ChatGPT write something for you. And you'll be able to, it used to be just you'd apply a filter to a photo and that would make you seem like a better photographer. But now as a better business person, you can use AI to draft a professional website with Midjourney. You can use AI to write compelling sales copy for clients, for sales script responses on the phone. There's so many more tools now to kind of fake it until you make it, to show that you are a professional when you are not yet. And it used to be much harder, and now in all of those other areas it's becoming much, much easier. Somebody sends you an email and you're not sure how to respond to that client, you put that response into ChatGPT, you say respond in this way, be empathetic or be salesy or show scarcity or whatever it is, and it will write that for you. So the person on the other end thinks that they're speaking with a high level expert when really they're just somebody typing some prompts into AI. So I think that's going to be another interesting aspect of it as it pertains to people running their businesses, is that all of a sudden there will be perceived many more professionals, and as a client hires somebody, they won't be sure if they're hiring somebody who's really been doing this for 10 years and is a professional, or somebody that just got some scripts. But also, you can just go purchase email scripts from another photographer as well.
Right.
That already existed. You could hire one-on-one mentoring for them to come in and redo your website. But I think that'll be another interesting use case for AI as we kind of continue to grow and to use other people's services, and we're trying to make decisions on who is going to be best, for us to hire based on how they present themselves. And it'll be much easier to present yourself in whatever way you feel like without having any authenticity behind it.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that aspect, because you're absolutely right, because people are doing that now, right? I mean, they've been doing it for a while. You could build a portfolio overnight just pulling images down from these micro stock agencies and saying that you're yours, and you're golden until somebody finds out. And now with ChatGPT, you can generate all the copy for your website, your about page, your sales page, all the different widgets. You could do all this and have it all written professionally in an evening, and then you just sort of assemble it on Squarespace or something, and you're on to the races. So that brings up a bunch of questions, how for weddings even, right? I know you, in the beginning of your career, you were shooting weddings. In that genre, someone decides, hey, I'm going to be a wedding photographer. Let me go download or use Midjourney to create a bunch of wedding images for my portfolio. I'm going to build this website that's upscale and has upscale copy and all the things. You might even generate a version of you that with a fancy English accent that, you could do all these things. So how do potential brides who hire photographers, frankly, just because they want to make sure they get images, right? They don't want to hire somebody that's going to mess up their one day, which is like boudoirs, right? But how do you safeguard against that? What what do you do? Can you show me the negatives or the raw files from your images before we proceed, or what? How do you get around that?
Yeah, that's what's so tricky about AI is like so much can be generated now, right? So you say like, well, read the reviews, but that can be falsified. You could
Yeah.
say, watch, I recommend people record video testimonials of their clients. Nothing is as powerful as listening to the tone of someone's voice when they speak emotionally about their experience with you. So I recommend this for people with who run their photography businesses. Like, get your client flipping through their album, record a video of them, even if it's on an iPhone, and ask them emotional questions, and show that on your website. So when somebody's flipping through, there's no like, oh, they probably just, a friend wrote something on Yelp, or one thing or another. This is like, there's no denying that this person had an incredible emotional experience. And so I think that is like a very massive way that in general today you can put up on your website to strengthen the validity of your business, to, people buy based on emotion, right? And if they're feeling something, watching a video of somebody else feeling something, that's going to increase your chance of booking a client. But I was just thinking, like, with this generative, it's crazy to think of like what might be possible. And again, why some industries will survive and why others won't. If you think about like headshots are one of the ones that I think are going to disappear. There's going to be no more need for headshot photographers because you'll be able to just send in pictures that you already have, and AI will generate you in a blue suit, you in a black suit, you with with glasses, you without glasses, or whatever it is, smiling, serious. And then this is like already a technology that I've seen a couple examples of. And for a company of 400 people to be able to just like go through and do that, they're not going to spend $50 or $100 per person for headshots for this. Nobody cares about the experience of a headshot. So those will just be able to be generated. And it kind of makes me weddings might be interesting to like get pictures of. You could probably just show up to the wedding and snap a couple of pictures of like the venue and the plates, and the dress, the bride in the dress or whatever, and the groom and the groomsmen, and then have AI take that and put it into a whole bunch of generated scenes where people are laughing and hanging out and kissing and walking down the aisle. Again, it's kind of moments like, I remember that moment when we stepped away for a little bit, and that makes this more special that it was captured, whereas a generated photo of that isn't going to hold as much. But again, like if you just crowdsource iPhone photos from your guests and then you put that into some software and say, make me the most beautiful, dramatic wedding photos you can, into something like a future version of Midjourney, I'm sure people are going to, go that route. Because they couldn't, spend several $1,000s on a photographer. So that'll be interesting too. The difference between, what industries are going to,
and we'll see
people
that
are going to pay for or not pay for.
We're going to see that start shaking out. And I think as these new consumption tools start showing up, and I hate to say it, but gentrification continues to kind of weed out the people that are technology resistant and the people that have grown up talking to AI since they were like my daughter, right? She's been talking to Alexa since she could make a word, right? So like all these things are kind of coming to a confluence of this question. Is photography as we know it dead? Is it going away? What do you think?
Oh, man. That's a good one. Thing that I've learned over the last couple of months is that I have no idea what's coming next.
Yeah.
Every time, I thought when ChatGPT came out and I was, pretty early on, I was like, this is incredible. I got to tell everybody. And everybody that I told, their jaw hit the floor and they couldn't believe it. And I'm like, cool, I'm ahead of the curve. And then I would see this next tool that came out and I was like, oh man, I had no idea that was possible. And then Midjourney became Midjourney 4, and it's like, this is insane what it can create. And I used it to generate like I wrote children's books on ChatGPT for my nieces, and like it came up with themes, and then it wrote the story, and it was great. And then I went to Midjourney and I used that to generate covers of like, it was just the back of their heads, so it didn't have to generate faces. But it was incredible. They were in the mountains in the Alps, and then they were swimming underwater, and then, you know, whatever it was. Incredible art things. And then I was like, cool, I'm ahead of the game. And now I just like, it is insane what's been coming out, and everything's been happening so quickly. So I don't presume to know what is or isn't, you know, going to exist, but I think I was talking to my friend. I don't know if you know Pratik.
Naik? Yes.
Yeah, shot by Pratik. He's a retoucher, and also he's been really into AI. I think his account is futurist.ai. But I messaged him before our chat because I was like, you're in this. I just want to make sure I'm dotting my I's, cross my T's. And we kind of came up with this concept that is essentially, if what's important about those photographs is the experience that you have getting them taken, then photography in that space shouldn't die out. If the end picture is the purpose, then yes, I think photography will cease to exist. And I'll give a couple examples. Some I heard from some people, again, from listening to different people discuss. But a good example is like a roller coaster ride. You know how you get your picture at the end of the roller coaster ride that said you went on the devil, you know, whatever it is, and your face is like, okay. So what is most important about that? Is it getting the photo, or is it being on the roller coaster? It wouldn't make sense to have the photo without being on the roller coaster. So you would just be like, haha, I was on this roller coaster, and just everybody would think you were cool or something. Like, it doesn't really make sense. The photograph is not the point. You have to have the experience. And I think that's, again, coming back to boudoir photography, why to get a bunch of pictures of yourself in lingerie and nude that you didn't experience, that it's like, I don't know. I don't think I would. I can't imagine wanting that. So, and I can't imagine a lot of the clients that are spending several $1,000s want to just upload pictures of themselves that get sent to them naked. Like, I just don't see it happening. But for things like headshots, even baby photos, if you're thinking like, it's tough, nap time is tricky, I just want to spend time with them, but if I could snap a couple of iPhone pictures and get them in like cute scenes and laying in the whatever, like how adorable, that would absolutely be great. Anything e-commerce or swimwear, if you're a brand and you're like, let's just stick with Tahiti. I really want to go to Tahiti. If you want pictures of your swimwear in Tahiti, but it would cost too much money to ship it to somebody there or to fly out there for a photo shoot, you just have on the cover of your website, of your lookbook, that bikini just typed in as like, mixed race model that's 5'7", that has curly hair, that whatever. And now you've got that product that you can sell, that can represent your brand. That's another one that's just going to be like, there's no reason to have a photographer. Anything commercial, my friend said, he works in the commercial space. He works for Vizio, and they set up these product shoots. And he's like, I mean, for me to Photoshop in a generative AI, a Sonos soundbar or a Coca-Cola can or anything like that is so easy now. So product placement after the fact, you're not going to need to set that up beforehand. That's another one. And then another one that I think will be really interesting, this I saw in somebody else's YouTube video, but the idea that like a celebrity can sell their likeness for, I was just in Chase Bank the other day, and like Kevin Hart's in there for no reason. Like his picture's up there, like, I bank with Chase. Like, he probably doesn't even bank with Chase, but he got paid to take a picture in a Chase Bank or wherever. But now a company like Chase is just going to be able to say like, hey, Kevin Hart, we would like to set up this promo with you in the Chase Bank smiling and doing this. And he can just say, okay. And then some creative director will generate this image and then gets the sign up for, and then Kevin Hart gets paid. They don't pay a photographer. And then Chase Bank has this content that says, Kevin Hart is here. So they won't even really need to do photo shoots either.
Yeah.
So
voice and everything,
really
right?
Interesting in those ways, because Kevin Hart doesn't need to show up. He can make so much more money just using his likeness. It's not about the experience. Yeah. So I think that'll be the big divide with what was remain, photography and hired for photographers, and what won't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was, when I asked that question, is photography dead? I was, purposely being, flippant or whatever. But I think, it's the law of conservation of energy, right? As applied to business. Nothing ever dies. It just changes form, right? So what you're describing is a possible next form of what photography might look like. And I think, and I'm curious what you think, like what are the businesses that are going to be born from this, this Phoenix, or what was it on Star Trek? What was that? Remember Star Trek when they had that bomb that remade a planet or something? You dropped the bomb on the planet and it just kind of destroyed everything.
I watched much Star
Trek.
You're
not a nerd. Yeah, sorry, I forgot you're the cool LA dude. I'm the nerd up here in Silicon Valley. But it was this whole idea of life from lifelessness, right? So where you remake something based on the atoms that were already there, which is kind of the law of conservation of energy. In business, what does that look like after this remaking kind of settles down? I feel like we're in the remaking process where the people that are in industries, whether it's photography or not, but the people that are in industries that are going to be directly affected are crying foul, and there's laws that need to be written and all the things, right, that happens when a new kind of sea change technology shows up, especially when it's fast moving as this AI stuff. But in those kinds of shakeups, there's always gazillionaires that pop out that have figured something out, like, oh, I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to register that domain and I'm going to start selling this little niche, like the California Gold Rush. I'm going to start selling Levi's. I'm going to start selling jeans to the miners. Screw that gold stuff. Let's sell jeans, right? And boom, they're still here today. What do you think, in your opinion, are like a couple of the major industries, or not even industries, new areas that might pop up? If you can think of any. I don't want to put you on the spot, but like what might show up that we have no idea that's going to show up. Like drones. We had no idea drones were going to show up until we got smartphones with accelerometers and little compasses and all the little things that make a drone work because of cell phones and smartphones. What's going to show up now for photographers?
I wish I had a good answer to this. I think one of the clear one is there's going to be more creative directing. There's going to be more.
Yeah.
It's going to be more ideas based. What can you come up with that will then be able to be, because the creation is becoming more and more simple. Just like just like no coding websites are becoming a thing. If you used to want to make a website, you had to know the code, and now once the code is gone, now it's just a bunch of designers that are creating beautiful things that allow people like us and using software like Squarespace to just type their stuff in on the page. So I think it's really going to be, again, the more top level type things, because a lot of the actual creation of it is going to be much more simple. So obviously the term prompt engineer is being tossed around a lot, which I think is going to be creative art directors. I think that's going to be a more important one. I'm not really sure. I think it's going to be interesting to see people use, maybe not on the image generation side, but for people to use like something like ChatGPT is so broad in what it can do, and it's only as good as the prompts you put in.
Yeah.
Which again, for that's why Jarvis is more successful, because they've kind of condensed, they've taken what ChatGPT and GPT-4 can do, and they've turned it into specifically improving it for copywriting. So before you click, write me a post about selling a pencil. Before you do that, you might get some super bland answer from ChatGPT, but from Jarvis, it might be more specific or focus more on, because it's already pre-filtering a lot of that stuff. So I think that, creating specific use cases under this bigger umbrella of what something can do, I think those people will have some success. But again, it's changing so quickly
every day
that for a lot of these things, by the time you come out with something and you're like, this is it, that will probably again be swallowed up So it's really hard to say with how fast everything's moving.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a double-edged sword, because a lot of the stuff we're talking about is, not so much negative. It's just like this could happen, but this is the negative side of the sword are the nefarious uses of this technology, and people are always going to find the path of least resistance to do negative things. But the other side of that blade is the positive side, right? So, and I think of that positive side, like in the case of ChatGPT, I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's a large contingent of the population, even if you just look at the US, right? There's a large contingent of the population here that have really good ideas, and they can't get them out because of some language barrier or grammar barrier, or they didn't finish school, so they don't know this, that, or whatever, or didn't go to college. You are blocked from entering a lot of spaces. You can't even write a good resume at that point, and if you do, people are going to look at it and say, oh, I'm not hiring this person. They can't even, use the right contractions or whatever, right? But now ChatGPT and technologies like it can step in and not so much remove, but lower that barrier of, I just want to write a kick-ass cover letter, or I just want to write a kick-ass letter to the CEO because I have an idea for a business. Old you would have been like, oh, I can't figure this out. Let me Google and get some examples and maybe copy and plagiarize or do whatever. Now you can just write a couple bullets about your idea and say, write it in the style of so-and-so, boom, and you got your letter, which means a ton of ideas will surface now, I think, because of this technology, whereas they'd be trapped behind literacy or whatever barriers that were there before. Those barriers lower. They're not going to go away, but they lower to help people get in the door, whether it be for script writing or whatever. You got an idea? You can get it out. You want to write a short story, a kid's book? You can now write it and illustrate it, right? So yeah, I see the positive and the negative of this stuff. One side that I'm curious to dive in with you is the business and entrepreneurial stuff. I want to touch on that a little bit. Before we talk about that sort of business stuff, I want to take us back and close the loop on the AI piece of the conversation, specifically with regard to, we talked about software and the things that are possible there with ChatGPT, where that might go, Midjourney and generative AI, Adobe Photoshop, generative AI, and generative fill, all that stuff. So we know where that kind of might go. But on the hardware side, I want to talk a little bit about the tools themselves. And here's one reason why I wanted to bring this up. Thank you for reminding me. Yesterday, as we record this is June 6th, 2023. On June 5th, 2023, Apple announced, a day that will live in infamy, by the way. Apple announced their new Vision Pro headset. And one of the things, I want to know if you caught this. One of the things that I caught in there was they have this feature. There's actually a button on top of the headset to allow you to take photos and record video. And they said, verbatim, this is the world's first consumer 3D camera. Right. And knowing Apple and the Apple installed base, what that said to me was whole new industry, a whole new way for photographers to tell stories. Now you can tell a story, and if a sizable amount of the population can view them with these headsets or like headsets, then there's all kinds of stuff that opens up to you, even like in Boudoir, right? So you can have a scene and take a 3D photo of that, and when somebody views that scene, they could look around and see things or actually be in the room, kind of. What do you think of that stuff? Like, is that, just the idea that Apple's moving in that direction? Apple's building a camera, dude. So, I think camera manufacturers might be a little afraid, or maybe not. I know, who knows what this $1 trillion company will set its sights on, but they could very easily set their sights on Nikon, Fuji, Canon, Lumix, all the guys, and reinvent that space with a brand new, slick Apple-looking device with an ecosystem and all the things already built in. Are we going there? Is that a possibility, Michael Sasser? I don't know.
Well, I just want to imagine for a second somebody with these goggles on and like their client in their lingerie on the couch and just being like,
yeah,
just clicking the button as
but
they
no,
kind of
I'm
put
saying
out these goggles on.
But if Apple, yeah, so that's, I mean, they're still ostensibly in beta with that headset, right? What if Apple decides, we're gonna make a proper camera,
but
using that
to
tech.
answer your question, essentially, like I was kind of thinking about this as you were talking about, what makes that interesting? The 3D space, they having LiDAR data associated with your photo. What can you do with that LiDAR data? It'll be really interesting to see how we consume. 3D has been around for a long time, and I would say most people don't prefer to experience, movies in 3D. They had 3D TVs for home, but probably a large part of that was the experience of like putting on those glasses, and it was never as sharp, and it just wasn't, that experience wasn't as good. But maybe as these headsets get better and you're actually looking at 4K screens in your eyes instead of through some sort of a lens system onto a screen, we can see that happen. But I think it will be interesting to see what the extra data allows us to do. I have no doubt that Apple's going to continue to do what they're doing and grow their cameras. The iPhone's already so good, and computational photography is incredible. And what you can do with an iPhone, I mean, I pretty much like don't walk around with a camera anymore. If I'm on vacation, 80 to 90% of the time, I'll just take my iPhone and throw a preset on there and shoot portrait mode. It's insane. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It does like 90% of what I would want it to do. So I've no doubt that Apple's going to keep going that direction. It is interesting, though. You kind of mentioned how will we view it in these 3D spaces. It's just interesting. You won't really be able to put up the picture on a wall, 3D picture on a wall, without again having to wear some kind of glasses. I think that's one of the reasons why video, you can't hang up a video. It's only viewable on a screen on your phone, so it just gets viewed much less than a photo would. I really do think that's interesting.
Michael does it though, right? Because the print is tied to a physical location, right, on Earth, where you got to put the print on the wall. It could look beautiful, be the best print in the world, but only people that can actually travel to that physical location can see it. Digitally, everybody can see it. Right? Everybody on the planet, not everybody, but a ton of people on the planet could see that photo. They have the proper gear, whether it's a phone, a tablet, a computer, or headset to see this thing. So doesn't it make sense to lead with digital first and make the physical creation of atoms secondary, because it's going to be an infinitely almost smaller market, although you could charge more. I don't know. Yeah. Am I off base there? Because
you make a good point. You make a good point. I mean, as these headsets become more accessible and smaller and easier to move around, I mean, that's kind of the whole point. You just pull out your phone and show somebody the picture that you took. So what if you could do that 3D experience through some glasses that you already had on?
Or they could see the photo on the phone itself. They don't have to have the glasses, right? Or on the computer, or on their Apple TV or Google thing or whatever. You could see it digitally at will, versus I need to travel to Southern California to Michael Sasser's house to go into this specific room to see this beautiful print that he made, right?
I think you're absolutely right. I think I read in a magazine probably 10 years ago this idea of like the future of what photography will be, and it described this experience of a kid's birthday party, and the dad's got glasses on with a camera here, and he opens up the door and everybody goes, "Oh my God, it's so good to see you." And it's taking pictures, and it's recognizing when the eyes are open and as people are smiling, and it's got a Wi-Fi chip in it that gets sent to a TV in the other room. So it only shows smiling pictures with eyes open. So you walk into the house, and immediately you see your excited face up on the TV screen, and then that can compile all the pictures from that and then send it out to make a photo album and ship it to everybody's house who is there without you really even having to do anything. So that was like something 10 years ago that I read in a magazine. So the ideas that people have of what's possible now are just, I mean, I couldn't even wrap my head around it.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think about the weaknesses of it, because this came from I'm in Northern California, like I mentioned, and there's FedEx. They're in Northern California, and we use Comcast. Most of us use, and I use Comcast Business because I wanted higher reliability than because I work from home. But I was thinking, it went out a couple of months ago, and how stranded I was. I'm a work from home guy who works on the internet, knowledge worker, as it were, completely, almost completely. I have my phone, so I could still kind of communicate. But I was thinking, what if I didn't have my phone? Like, what if my phone was out too, and my internet's out? I cannot generate income. I cannot do my job. Then I'm thinking, not to go political, but I'm thinking, what if the U.S. gets into a conflict with some country, and that country decides to target our infrastructure or drop an EMP on us or something, right? And knock out everything. Now all the people that are driving electric cars are screwed. People that work on the internet are screwed. It goes on. And people that want to see the photos that you created that are only existing in the ether, now those are gone too. Right. So there is an argument for the physical, I think. Right.
I think physical wall prints are going to be the least of our issues if we get into a conflict with EMPs and internet cutting out, and then we can't communicate with anybody. I think that's
LA is dark. Oh shit, my wedding pictures, right?
I mean, not that pictures aren't, important to hold close, but I think we're going to be trying to figure out how to get food from the grocery store, how to get the supply chain of bread.
Yeah, you're right. We'll have bigger fish to fry. As we get to the end of this, and again, thank you for your time today, man. I appreciate you having this conversation with me. But I want to switch gears kind of away from AI and over to business, because you were, and I think I said this in a previous interview with you, you're one of those photographers or photopreneur people that understand marketing. You understand the know, like, trust factor. You understand digital sales. You know how to create saleable content and all the things, right? That's an alchemy level power that many people don't have. And I'm going to bring up your website here, this boudoircourses.com, of which I have some courses from. Thank you for sending those over. But the courses that you have in here are done, very well done, to a high level of production and professionalism. And I don't feel like I'm not getting what I need out of these courses. I'm curious, how is this going? Like, what does this world look like for you now, versus the other things that you're involved in? Is this going strong? Are you going to pivot this? Are we going to start seeing AI courses up here? What does this world look like?
Well, actually, it's really interesting. Kajabi now has, I haven't tried it yet, but they do have the ability to, like, I don't know how it works, but it's like, create a line for your course, AI generated. So I think you could say, I want to create a course on nutrition, or I want to create a course on, I don't know, whatever it is, and it'll generate an outline for what it thinks would be a good course for you to put together, which I thought was really interesting that they've implemented something like that. But yeah, it's going great. Like I said kind of earlier in our video, the ability to create accessible content for a large number of people is great. With boudoir photography, what's the goal of boudoir photography? You're trying to empower somebody, give them, maybe new tools. Maybe you're trying to help with their confidence. You're trying to get them from point A to point B. You're somebody who's holding their hand from one place to the next place that they're going. They need your help to be able to do that. And that's not unlike what education is. I mean, basically what I'm doing with the courses are, you're here, you're wherever you're at now, you're at point A and you want to get to point B. And I'm just trying to hold your hand through that process. I'm trying to get you to maybe skip a couple of the steps, avoid a few of the failures. And then what's really incredible about that is now I'm giving you the information and the power to go out there and then make a positive effect and impact on these people. So in some ways, I've heard before this idea like, oh, if you're if you're able to shoot and earn good money, like why would you teach? You're kind of assuming that that's only coming from the place of income, but to be able to, if I can shoot 50 clients a year, or I could help 100 clients, or I could help 100 photographers who could also shoot 50 clients a year, that's like a massive impact in the space. Yeah. So, yeah, man, I've been loving it. It's been a while since the last course that I came out with was the Double Your Poses course, which was just awesome to create, because posing is one of those very elusive things that everybody feels like they need more posing. Like if I could just have a few more poses, I would be confident. I've got my client in and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So instead of making it just like a bite-sized section in another course, I ended up making 3 full photo shoots of different body types in different size rooms, in different scenarios, and showed the behind the scenes of the shoot. And then I went through and culled each of the photos and talked about why one photo worked and one photo didn't. And then I took all of the photos that I did choose into editing, and then you see me editing them start to finish. So I've really tried hard to just like, any question that you have, I want to make sure I've already answered it in the course. And that comes from, taking time with people and hearing their feedback and asking a lot of questions before you get started in creating the course. It doesn't help to just, I want to make a course and just pick something and start going. Like, figure it out. What do people need to learn? What's gonna help them? What's exciting to learn? Those sort of things I think are really, really important to do. So it's been awesome. I've been really having a blast with it. 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yeah, nice. Very cool. And you're using as a platform, you mentioned Kajabi. How has that been for you because Kajabi is an all-in-one platform for course sales and email marketing and all the things, right? Versus installing a WordPress or a Squarespace and then getting MailChimp and doing all the things. You kind of do it in one spot. It's a little bit more pricey, but if you add it up, probably less expensive all in. How's that been for you with the courses?
I like Kajabi. I actually started having people just download the files through Dropbox.
Yeah.
This was like in 2016, I think I came out with my first product, and they would just basically get a download link, and there was no login. There was, they just purchased on Squarespace. They'd get a download link, and that worked okay until I wanted to be able to update my products consistently. So somebody buys a product, and I say, oh, I got a message. Hey, I felt like I didn't get enough information on this. Great, I'll add to that. There wasn't really a way for me to do that through that system. So I signed up with a software called Thinkific.
Oh, yeah, Thinkific. Yeah.
And that was great. But there were a few limitations to that software. And then including, and it was also price prohibitive for the more users that you had. So I kept looking around. I used ClickFunnels for a little while for my sales pages, and then that would send them to Kajabi on the back end until I had too many problems with that. And then I settled on just Kajabi. And it's been great. I've been using Kajabi for about 3 years, and it's easy to upload. It's easy to write descriptions. The downloads are really simple. The sales pages are pretty intuitive. It takes payments from PayPal and credit cards, which is really nice. So it's been really nice. My advice, if anybody's listening to this and they're curious about starting something, pick something. They all mostly do the same thing. There are a few subtle differences, but I wouldn't spend weeks and weeks, figuring out what software you're going to do. Those are sort of some of the smaller decisions that a bunch of people are on all of them, teachable, that are all successful and making money. That won't make or break your business. But I've been really happy with Kajabi.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been looking into it as well. It's the whole different interview discussion to kind of dive into that stuff. But yeah, part of my journey was trying to even do the whole roll your own thing, right? With WordPress and then WordPress plugins for courseware in there. And there's even WordPress plugins. There's one called Fluent CRM for email marketing within your WordPress site. So you're not limited by, you can only have 10,000 contacts. You could have 100,000 in there if you want. And it plugs into Amazon. So it's using the same kind of backend that the bigger services are using, only it's a WordPress plugin. So those kind of things. But you're right. Having everything all under one username and password, it's kind of magical. Not having to worry about this and that. And does this work with that? I got to plug this in with Zapier to do all this. And just everything just sort of works. Yeah. So cool, man. So let's wrap this up with the what's next. What's on the horizon for Sasser? We touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but what's next? Like when you hang up here, what are you doing? What do you want to get done before 2024 rolls around?
Well, the big project that I have coming up that's mostly done, I'm sending it out to a few other photographers just to get a little feedback on it. And just speaking of entrepreneurship, one thing that's really important to know is that whatever you put out first isn't going to be the last thing that you're ever going to put out. You can adapt it, you can update it, you can come out with a version 2. I've got the Accelerator Course 2.0. So I'm getting a little bit of feedback on this 10-part business start, which I'm really excited about. It was just going to be like a little 10-page thing. It turned out to be 50 pages. And it covers everything from, if you don't know the first thing about branding, it's got a little workbook section so you could write down, keep track of what fonts you choose. There are links to websites I recommend for coming up with font pairings and color pairings, and how do you come up with a language of how you talk about your brand. And then goes into coming up with a business name and registering that business name, and how you do that. It has sections on creating professional looking social media profiles so that when somebody goes, they'll be drawn, they'll remember who you are. It's got things on your website and on goal setting, because honestly, people get overwhelmed and they get stuck, I have all these big ideas, and they sit down to work on it and they work really hard on the first day. And then the second day, they're not sure what they're supposed to do next. They don't set a deadline for themselves. And then, it's 2 months later and they're no closer. They're no closer to their goals. They're no closer to launching their business. They're no closer to, generating revenue or making a difference in people's lives, whatever it is. So we talk about goal setting, and how to hold yourself accountable in that as well. So I'm really excited about that. So that'll be coming out. People can look for that. Is really the next big thing on the horizon. We'll see. I've got a couple of YouTube videos that I think are going to be important for me to make. I've had a lot of people asking me questions about income and how I generate that. And, they see my YouTube videos and they're not quite sure. The idea of making money with photography is just some people don't really understand how that's possible, how you go about doing that. So I think that's going to be a YouTube video that's in my future. And man, we'll see what else. The door is pretty open right now, so it's exciting, but it's also
terrifying.
It's also tricky. So we'll see.
No, for sure. Yeah, I definitely want to keep up with you on all this stuff. One thing I want to throw in there was, you mentioned, this is a complete non sequitur, by the way, but you mentioned how when you travel, you're just taking your iPhone with you for the most part, if you're not doing any professional shoots. Have you ever experimented with or considered using it for professional work, like doing a full boudoir shoot just with your phone? Is that possible? Are we there yet?
So I actually did make a YouTube video when the iPhone 11 came out. I pre-ordered it. I went to go pick it up from the UPS store at 9 a.m. that morning, and I shot, I had somebody come over and I did a whole behind the scenes video using the phone to do it. And I was wildly impressed with it. However, for professional use, honestly, the biggest difference isn't even necessarily in image quality. It does matter, but the experience of taking pictures and composing quickly, and the handle of shooting horizontal and vertical, and being able to flip through photos and changing your settings quickly, all of those things I think moving through the experience of a shoot are just there. I feel like I can just do it so much better. Even if you could click the picture quickly, the grip and, you know, I don't know, they're coming out. I think Hasselblad has a grip that like attaches MagSafe to your phone. But yeah, again, just the experience that like the camera's the camera and you don't want to accidentally bump a button that takes you into your text messages or your, you know, whatever. I can't really see it for professional use anytime soon in the framework that it exists in. But you know, more likely computational photography will start to make its way into professional cameras. Yeah. And you'll be able to put presets in the camera directly. Maybe they'll have LiDAR sensors built into the cameras. Maybe, you know, built-in HDR and, you know, all kinds of things I could imagine. But right now, just personally, the form factor, the experience of how quickly you can take pictures, that the blurry section of the photo is not always reliably, you know, you can't rely on it the way you can a professional camera. So is it awesome? Is it amazing? Absolutely. Do I love using it? I love using it. It's just not as predictable and reliable as, you know, as the pro cameras right now. Yet,
right? Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah, my prediction, and we'll end with this. My prediction is, I don't know if it's a prediction or a hope or, I don't know, a fear even, but if Apple with their multi-trillion-dollar market cap decides that it's time for a disruption of the photography industry, right? And to do that, you need glass, you know, which I think is first, right? So let's go buy somebody with glass, a Nikon or somebody like that, right? So you pick them up with their library of lenses, so they have that, and the glass works for new lenses. And you know, we really need to get into this AI field, but you know, we're not really tooled up for that now, and we need to get into it from a creative standpoint. This is me paraphrasing what Apple might say. But so they go find some pocket change and buy Adobe, right? So now they have Adobe, and then they use their infrastructure for App Store, for computational photography, for building amazing chips and all that. And they put together a reimagining of what a camera could be with that 3D stuff in there, all that. But it no longer looks like what we think is a camera. It looks more like probably one of these things with some other bells and whistles on it. And now they have a whole ecosystem for sharing with photos and all the things. I see like that's a possibility, right? I feel like they could take the industry and this overnight make it amazing. I mean, it's already amazing, but they could slap some of their sauce on it and disrupt the whole thing. You feel like that's a fantasy?
I, again, you know, not knowing what's possible, but essentially
this guy's hedging his bets. He's like, I'm not going to say, but
Apple's a computer company, right? So
yeah, well,
what is the iPhone but a computer in your pocket? What is the iPad but a smaller computer? What is the camera? The Apple TV, but basically your computer screen, but now focused on entertainment. So I think that it'll be really interesting to see. And the new headset is a computer on your head. Yeah. So I think it'll be really interesting to see, but a lot of companies have tried to disrupt industries that they weren't a part of with all of the money in the world. Google's tried to do it a bunch in a bunch of different areas. They try to do their social media, you know, Google Plus or Google. What was the Google one where you had like a profile and they had a feed and
Hangouts? They tried Hangouts.
We don't even remember the name of it.
No,
but like
I don't.
Google had plenty of money to, you know, oust Facebook, and it didn't work. And I was listening to this podcast with the founder of Canva, and she was saying like Blockbuster Video didn't, you know, Netflix came through, Facebook came through and knocked off the previous company of MySpace. And so to just
Friendster,
it's very difficult for a company who used to do one thing jump into a completely different thing just strictly on how do people see that company as like, are they going to keep, Apple can make shoes, sure, but would people choose their shoe brand? Like I wear Apple shoes versus Adidas or Nike or something like that. So that's where I think it might be really interesting. Do I doubt that they have the ability to come out with a quality product? Not at all.
Yeah.
But that's where I think it's going to be interesting as far as the consumer experience. If people are going to want to have, believe in the Apple camera ecosystem.
Right.
I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, the portable music player space was a mess before Apple jumped into it with iPod, right? So, and now look,
it's a good example of them disrupting an industry that they were originally, a tech computer company took over the music industry. That's a perfect example.
Yeah, and it will never be the same, and I feel like we're seeing pangs of that again in other spaces. So who knows? It's a different time. It's a different. The market's different.
I would love it.
Yeah. I mean, as a content creator, absolutely. A, new toys to play with. B, new things to teach people about. Right. So what's not to love? So,
absolutely.
I love it. Michael Sasser, man, thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate you for taking time to do this. We talked about your website a little. Let me bring it up again. Boudoir Courses is where the courses are. If people want to connect with you personally or professionally or hire you or any of that stuff, what's the best place for them to point their browsers to?
Yeah, so the best places are, if you're just looking for free how-to for Boudoir, that's on my YouTube channel. You can just type in my name, Michael Sasser. For Instagram, my photography company, Sasser Stills Boudoir. That's if you want to check out my my personal photography business. And then, of course, boudoircourses.com is for anything to kind of help you level up, start your business, improve your next level posing, things like that. Those are probably the best ways to come hang out.
Yeah, I love it. Let me know when that business course launches, and I'll, you can let me know before it launches. I'm happy to help you proofread it and do all the things, So, but let me know when you launch it, and I'll get the word out. Help get the word out about it. I think it's a much needed resource for photographers looking to get into business, to understand everything beyond f-stops, shutter speeds, posing, ISO, all that stuff, all the underneath the waterline for the iceberg things, right? So very cool.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend, we'll leave it right there. Michael Sasser, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
This is TWiP.